Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Viewers, many of you have seen and experienced the sound logic that our guest for today, Mr. M R Venkatesh, gives in his debates. He has been extensively participating in debates, whether it was Times Now or Republic Now. I'm sure he is there in many other channels. I only remember these two, so please pardon me for not giving the breadth of his exposure to you as the viewer. I wanted to have this conversation with Sri M R Venkatesh as a follow-up to what happened in the Ram Mandir debate that took place on Friday. I felt that when you have a lot of people, the time that you are allotted to make your point is not enough. So I requested Sri M R Venkatesh to come talk to PGurus about what he was trying to say in the Ram Mandir case. MRV, welcome to PGurus channel.
Good evening, sir.
So MRV, so I want to get straight to the point. What are your thoughts on how this government can settle this issue once and for all, rather than just drag it out? It's been too long. India has been talking about this for way too long. How do we move beyond this?
Before I go into the how of it, I would like to go to the why of it. Why should you have a Ram temple? Many people ask why there are around 30 lakh temples in India. What if there is one more or one less? The point is, to understand this, I think there are, in 1992 or 93, early 92, late 92, early 93, a series of debates happened in Chennai, where leading lights of the Ayodhya movement and the secular side also participated in a very serene, calm atmosphere in Chennai. These were captured in a book called Ayodhya by the Center for Policy Studies, of which Professor Bajaj has written an extraordinary introduction for 40 odd pages. I think that settles the core of any argument and puts a reason why you should have a temple in Ayodhya. Now, if you walk along Mount Road, to the end of Mount Road, or Anna Salai as it's called now, you find the statue of Thomas Munro. Now, Thomas Munro was a tyrant. Now, nowhere in a lot of countries were actually subjugated in the 17th, 18th, 19th and 20th centuries. Once they liberated, they never had somebody like Thomas Munro's statue as a very prominent display in a prominent part of your city. Now this happens in Calcutta. You have the Victoria Memorial, you have the Gateway of India, you have in every town, you have this ocular demonstration that we were a subjugated lot, and hence we are a subjugated lot. So this perhaps goes on reminding ourselves that we were slaves at one point in time, we were defeated. And whenever a defeated race always thinks negatively, it is never able to think positively. So Ram Mandir was basically a symbol of how a country which actually got liberated. You didn't get freedom just because you changed it from, say, Lord Mountbatten to Pandit Nehru. It was only transfer of power, as they say. The real freedom happens when you believe that this country will start finding its civilizational moorings. And one of the civilizational god or representatives of our history, believe me, it is not mythology, it is not epic. It is Lord Rama lived here. And Lord Rama constructed the Ram Setu. Lord Rama waged a war in Lanka and he defeated Ravana. So you see, the Lord was not a Lord from the mythical or the reverential point of view. He was like Shivaji Maharaj, he was like Pandit Nehru, or he was like somebody else who lived in this country and ruled this country. So we need to get back to our actual history. And the history starts getting reconstructed only from the first point where Lord Rama actually was born. So we need to understand this is actually reconnecting us with our historical roots, with our tradition, with our culture. So the why part of it is that we need to have the Lord Rama temple. Simultaneously, we need to figure out whether we have to have Thomas Munro statue in the end of Anna Salai. I can have Anna statue there, I can have Karnanidhi statue there, I can have MGR statue there, but Thomas Munro statue at the end of Mount Road is an ocular demonstration how we Tamils have lost our pride in our own culture and our own thinking. Now, the second point which you asked me, and perhaps the more substantive part of the debate, I think the tectonic shift in this debate has happened ever since Dr. Swami has made a very fundamental observation, and he says that it is his fundamental right to pray, and that precedes all other property rights. And perhaps we can go ahead and build a temple because he says that that's my fundamental right, and part 3 of the constitution overrides every other part of the constitution. Now, going further, taking clue from what Dr. Swami said, I now, after the Ayodhya judgment, I have not read it in greater detail, which the Supreme Court had announced last week. And part of it, if I have understood correctly, says that a mosque or that part of the debate is not required for this particular case, whether mosque is integral to Islam or not. And it has been thus reduced to a very simple property suit, whether X owns the property or Y owns the property. Now, whether X owns or Y owns, I feel that is immaterial at this point in time. Now, X owns and hence X has to have it, or Y owns or Y has to have it, is irrelevant to the correct debate. What government should do is that take over the property. Now, why it should take over the property and what is the constitutional basis? Now, if you have a piece of land after 1978, that property is no longer your fundamental right. It is only a legal constitutional right. It's been a constitutional right, no doubt. Under 300A of the Constitution, it is a constitutional right, no doubt. But under the Constitution, you can be divested of a property under a law. Just like they take over the land for building a highway or a port or an airport and say that this is for development, we need to have this piece of land and pay you a compensation. The most of the debate is whether you are paid 3 lakhs per plot of land or whether you are paid 5 lakhs. The debate is not whether your land has to be taken up or not. That is settled after abolition of 19(1)(f) from the part 3 of the Constitution. So what remains is that whether you have to be paid a compensation. So now, if you can take a piece of land for building a highway or an airport or a port, why not for Ram Mandir? Now, whether it Supreme Court's decision, in my view, is irrelevant at this point in time, because Supreme Court at best can say that this is owned by X or the Nimori Akhada, or whether it is owned by the Waqf board. That's all it can say. It can't say anything more, and it will go through the historical facts, and the historical facts have been well settled. It is now clear that there was a Ram Mandir below the entire Babri Masjid, or so-called Babri Masjid structure, and there was a very big temple over there. It is
Vaishnava
all
temple. Vaishnava temple, yes.
Vaishnava temple. So that is all settled. So now, Supreme Court cannot go into the facts of the case unless these are so perverse. And I'm sure there is nothing that is going to be brought out and recorded is perverse. These are all going to be only delaying tactics at this point in time from the other side. And I believe in the best interest of communal harmony, the government must pass an ordinance as what the VHP has demanded. Take over the land, give the land to the VHP to construct a grand Ram Mandir, and as a compensation, please allow the Muslims to have a mosque built at their place of choice. Of course, they are entitled to that.
As a matter of fact, the Shia board has requested that if a masjid were to be built in Lucknow, that would be acceptable to them as a group. So I think there is meeting of minds. Maybe there is not meeting of all minds, but I think there is enough here that probably can lay the path for the government to take over and do this. I think I think you'll agree with me when I say this. We want these settled now, and there are many more pressing issues for the country to move forward, and I think that's where the attention has to be directed.
Exactly. Can I tell you something more on this? If the Shia Waqf board believes that this land has to be given up for the larger interest, we should welcome it in the open arms, and also understand in this country you are not going to have 130 crore people agree on the same point on the same issue. When governments are formed with 30-40% votes, Please understand, if you get 40% votes today, you are forming a government. That means those 60% are against you technically, you still form a government. So today, you can't go by measuring all these type of silly statistics. We have to see what is good in the larger interest of the nation and what is within the constitutional morality. And the constitutional morality allows you, for heaven's sake, let us be very clear about it, that a piece of land can be taken over by a government for any purpose. Now, the purpose is not only development in the strict physical sense, it can also be in the psychological sense, it can be in the spiritual space also. And if the government takes over a land and hands it over to a particular denomination for constructing a temple and says that we will not interfere henceforth in this, and also gives a compensation to the other side, I think it will be in the best interest. And believe me, the present government headed by Narendra Modi will go down in the history as making one of the finest decisions. Now, whatever be the cause and consequences, it will be held as somebody who was capable enough of biting the bullet. And I'm sure the Prime Minister is being well advised by his legal team. And I'm sure that he will take an appropriate decision very shortly. And let us not wait for the Supreme Court verdict, because Supreme Court verdict will only create bitterness. Nobody, if you win, you are going to be saying that I have won, and the other side is going to say that I have lost. So the Supreme Court was not appreciating this evidence or that evidence. Nobody is going to take Supreme Court's verdict with, even if they are losing, they are not going to take it up with full open arms. They are going to always question whether Supreme Court appreciated this particular evidence or that particular evidence. The second choice would be to use communal leaders and sit down, and spiritual leaders who sit down and say that we have come to an amicable settlement. This is a path which I would always agree is the best path. But unfortunately, this is not happening. We have been trying for the last 25 years. This has not happened. So the third option, I think, is the best option today. Now that it has been reduced to a property suit, it is a title suit. Better the Prime Minister interferes, passes an ordinance perhaps 48 hours from now, and says that Ayodhya land has been taken over and given to the VHP, and perhaps by this Diwali, which is probably 20-25 days from now, probably next month, by this time we'll be celebrating Diwali, the Prime Minister himself goes to the Ram Janmabhoomi and begins the Kar Seva. So that would be a wonderful signal to all of us that, and I'm sure my Muslim brothers, the Christian brothers will welcome this, because nobody wants this type of wound to fester, and everybody agrees that the Ram Mandir has to be built, and it will be built. The process, whether through the law of the land prevailing through a will of the people, or whether it is enforced through a property suit dispute by the Supreme Court, is the question. I think the will of the people through a popularly elected government is a far better choice than through a property dispute. That would be doing a great disservice to this wonderful communal harmony that prevails in this country.
And that's an excellent observation, MRV. And let's hope that the government is listening, because we have bigger fish to fry. I'm sorry to use the phrase, but in American thing, that means there are bigger issues to solve. So thank you very much, MRV.
Thank you.